Don't we all kind of crave those really solid relationships?
Hmm.
You know, the kind that feel like a safe haven no matter what craziness is happening around us.
Totally. We all want that.
But what if I told you the secret isn't necessarily about finding that quote-unquote perfect person?
Hmm.
What if it's about committing to something totally different?
Okay, now you've got me intrigued.
So today we're deep diving into this whole concept of total and unconditional commitment,
Mm.
but to the relationship itself, not just the person. And to help us unpack this, we're turning to a book called Second Marriages: Why 40% Succeed and 60% Don't.
Okay, second marriages, that's interesting.
I know, right? But before you skip ahead thinking this doesn't apply to you, trust me, the insights in this book, they're gold, whether you're in your first relationship, your fifth, or somewhere in between.
So it's like a fresh perspective on commitment no matter what your relationship history looks like.
Exactly. And just to be super clear up front, this isn't about becoming a doormat or putting up with bad behavior. It's not about agreeing with everything your partner says or does.
Gotcha. So no blindly following along.
Nope, not at all. It's about discovering this framework, and I think it might surprise you, this way of consciously choosing where to invest your energy so you can build a stronger, more resilient bond.
Okay, so it's less about going with the flow and more about being intentional.
Exactly. So let's break this down. When we talk about total and unconditional commitment to the relationship, what does that actually look like? What are we seeing in this book?
It's about weathering those storms together,
Right.
choosing to be in it for the long haul. It's like they say, it's not about finding the perfect person. It's about seeing an imperfect person perfectly.
I like that.
This concept takes that idea a step further. It's about seeing the relationship, the connection itself, as this precious thing that's worthy of that same deep level of commitment.
That makes sense. But how is that different from just being committed to the other person?
It's a subtle but powerful distinction. Think of it like an umbilical cord.
Okay, where are we going with this?
So a mother is totally committed to her baby while it's connected in the womb.
Right.
But once the baby is born, that cord is cut and the commitment shifts. It becomes focused on that child as an individual.
Oh, wow. I see what you're saying. That's a powerful image. So in a relationship, we're not just committing to our partner, but to that connection between us, that bond itself,
You got it. It's like nurturing the relationship itself as its own entity.
like a garden.
Exactly. The book talks about all these different relationship styles, but the one they highlight as the ideal is this love and submit type. And in this type, both partners are fully on board. Both of them are totally committed to that relationship's success.
So it's not about one person carrying all the weight. It's about a shared responsibility.
Exactly. A true partnership.
I can already see how this could lead to way more stability and resilience. It's like you're shifting your focus from, I don't know, like the waves crashing around you to the vastness of the ocean itself.
Such a good analogy.
But how do we actually do this? How do we put this idea of committing to the relationship into practice?
Well, that's where the book gets really interesting. It lays out 6 practical strategies for staying unconditionally committed. And we might not have time to go through all of them today.
That's okay.
But let's at least hit on a couple that I think might really resonate with our listeners.
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right. The first one that jumps out at me is respect.
Respect.
But not just respect for your partner. It's about having that same level of respect for the relationship itself. The book argues that marriage, as an institution, actually has this inherent value.
Interesting.
So by respecting marriage itself, you're more likely to respect all those promises, those vows that you made.
Okay, I get that. So it's like acknowledging that the relationship has this significance beyond just the two individuals involved.
Exactly. And that respect kind of naturally helps you set boundaries.
Yeah.
Boundaries that protect the relationship from negativity,
Negativity from where?
both from the inside and the outside.
Protecting it from outside negativity.
Mm.
That's something I think a lot of people really struggle with, especially when it comes to family and friends who maybe aren't always as supportive as we'd like.
Oh, for sure. And the book actually has this really great example about dealing with that. So imagine you've got this friend, right? And they're constantly negative about your partner.
Oh, we all have that friend.
Right. So this framework would encourage you to just shut that negativity down, but like politely, but firmly.
Like how? What would you say?
You could say something like, hey, I love you, but I really need to protect my relationship. You don't have to understand it, but I need you to respect it.
So it's about setting boundaries with love, but also being clear about what you need.
Exactly. It's about saying, this relationship matters to me, and I'm not going to let negativity chip away at it.
That's a really valuable takeaway. Now, I know we have to keep moving, but I'm curious about another strategy that really stood out to you.
Hmm. Well, the one that really resonated with me was this idea of positive affirmations.
I love positive affirmations.
We often underestimate the power of our words, right? But this book really highlights how speaking positive truths about your relationship, even when things are tough, can have a huge impact.
So it's like you're speaking your relationship into existence almost.
Yeah, in a way, the book emphasizes how powerful words are, both spoken and unspoken. And it talks about how to use affirmations to combat negative thoughts and reframe how you see the relationship.
So instead of dwelling on, what if this doesn't work out, you'd consciously shift to, I choose to believe this will work out.
Yes, you're getting it. And it actually gives specific tips for crafting those affirmations. Like they should be short and specific and in the present tense.
Give me an example.
So instead of saying, I hope my relationship will be amazing, you'd say, my relationship is blessed and strong.
And instead of, I will be faithful to my partner, it's, I am faithful to my partner. Wow, that's powerful stuff.
Right.
It's like you're declaring that commitment out loud, and not just to yourself, but to the universe, I guess.
Yes. And the book really stresses that these affirmations have to come from a sincere place. You gotta truly believe in the words. It's about aligning your thoughts, words, and actions with the kind of relationship you want.
Wow, I'm really feeling this idea of being intentional about the energy we bring to our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about just coasting along. It's about making the conscious choice to nurture that bond, to actively speak life into it.
Exactly. And I love how you said speak life into it because think about it. Relationships are kind of like a garden. You got to weed out the negativity, plant those seeds of positivity, and then really water them with consistent effort.
Oh, I love that analogy. So we've got respect and positive affirmations,
Yeah.
but there are 4 more strategies in the book that we haven't even touched on.
Yeah, and they're all really good.
And I'm sure our listeners are ready to hear about those. But I think it's time for a quick break. We'll be right back to dive into those other strategies and explore how they can help you create that super strong, lasting relationship.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've been talking about this idea of really committing to the relationship itself, not just the person, and how that can make for a way stronger bond.
Right.
And we touched on respect and positive affirmations as strategies.
Yeah, those are big ones.
But this book, it also gets into something called healthy limits,
Ah, yes, that's so important.
especially when it comes to family and friends.
It's about making sure that your main relationship, your priority, is the one with your partner, and then setting those boundaries to protect that connection.
Because, yeah, not everyone in our lives is always going to be on board with our relationship choices.
Totally. It's not about shutting people out, but about realizing that outside influences can really mess with the dynamic between you and your partner.
Right, right. So it all ties back into that respect thing, right?
Right.
Respecting the relationship enough to protect it. But how do you actually set those boundaries without causing a ton of drama or hurting people's feelings?
Well, the book stresses being really straightforward.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say your family is, I don't know, super critical of your partner.
Ugh, been there.
Right. It happens. So you might need to gently say something like, I hear what you're saying. I really do. But I need you to trust me on this. I'm in this relationship and I need your support, not your criticism.
Ooh, that's good. Firm but loving.
Exactly. And you're explaining your reasoning without getting all defensive.
Yeah, because that never helps.
Nope. It's about standing your ground, protecting your relationship, but in a way that preserves those other relationships too. The ones with family and friends.
Makes total sense. Now, the book also talks about a strategy that might be, well, a little out there for some people. Prayer,
Yeah, that one can be a little tricky.
especially if someone isn't religious or spiritual.
Totally. But I think the idea behind it, the principle, is pretty powerful, regardless of your beliefs.
How so?
Well, the book frames prayer as a way of bringing something bigger into the relationship.
Like a higher power.
Exactly. It's acknowledging that there's something beyond just the two of you at play.
So it's kind of like acknowledging that you're not alone on this relationship journey.
Yeah. It's like tapping into a source of strength and guidance that's bigger than yourselves.
And that can be comforting, especially when things get really rough.
Absolutely. And the book really emphasizes that even in the toughest situations, prayer can give you hope. It can make you more resilient.
So it's not about asking for what you want to happen. It's more about surrendering to something bigger.
Right. It's about saying, we don't have all the answers. We need help.
Hmm. I'm thinking about that umbilical cord analogy again. It's like, even though the cord is cut, there's still that invisible connection, that source of nourishment, of support. And maybe prayer is one way to tap back into that.
I like that. It's about remembering we're not alone in this, even when it feels like we are.
Okay, so we've got respect, positive affirmations, healthy limits, and prayer. That's 4 of the 6 strategies from the book.
Keeping track.
But before we jump into the last 2, I want to bring up something really important that the book talks about, and that's unconditional commitment when it comes to abusive relationships.
That's a heavy one, but so important to address.
Because this whole framework, it's definitely not about enduring abuse or staying in a situation that's harming you.
100%.
And we need to be clear, we are not experts in this area.
Yeah.
We're not giving advice or solutions about abusive relationships.
Way above our pay grade.
But the book does have a unique take on these really, really difficult situations.
It talks about this idea that the adversary in abusive situations is often a spiritual force.
Not just the abuser themselves.
Right. And it's not about excusing the abuse, but realizing there might be these deeper things going on that need to be dealt with.
And the book points to faith and prayer as tools that can help you be more resilient and find strength.
It's about finding support outside of yourself, something to help you navigate those super tough situations, and to make the best decisions for your own safety and well-being.
And I think it's really important for anyone listening who is in an abusive situation or knows someone who is, to reach out and get help. There are resources available to support you.
Absolutely. Reach out. Don't suffer alone.
Okay, so let's move on to the 5th strategy the book outlines. This one is all about self-control.
This is a big one for sure.
It's about staying focused on what's important, like really keeping your eyes on the prize.
Resisting those temptations and distractions that can lead you astray and threaten the relationship.
And it's so easy to get pulled in different directions these days.
Oh, for sure. There's always something vying for our attention. But this strategy is about reminding yourself what you're working towards, what you're committed to.
And the book actually provides a great visual for this.
Right. It suggests keeping a photo of your partner or your family at your desk at work.
Simple, but effective.
Totally. It's like a little visual reminder to ground you when things get tough or you're feeling tempted to stray.
It helps you stay connected to your commitment even when you're physically apart.
Exactly. Absence doesn't have to make the heart grow fonder of someone else.
Huh. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered 5 strategies. What's the final piece to this puzzle of building that unconditional commitment to the relationship?
Drum roll, please. It's communication.
Okay, that seems pretty straightforward.
But hold on, we're not just talking about, talking. This is deeper. It's about truly understanding each other.
Even when you're not physically together.
Yes. It's about bridging that gap that can happen when life gets crazy busy.
Because sometimes we get so caught up in our own stuff, we forget to really connect with our partner.
And the book emphasizes that communication isn't always about words.
So it's more than just talking. It's about really paying attention.
Exactly. Noticing their body language, their tone of voice, even their silences.
All those subtle cues.
Yes. It's about being present, being engaged, even when you're not physically in the same space.
It's about creating that space for true connection, even when life is chaotic. Okay, so let's recap. We've got 6 key strategies from this book. Respect for the relationship itself, positive affirmations, setting those healthy limits, prayer, self-control, and deep communication.
Nailed it. And I think it's important to remember that these strategies, they're tools, not rules.
Right, it's not like a checklist you have to rigidly follow.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for your relationship, what feels authentic to you and your partner. Using these principles as a guide, to help you build that strong, resilient connection.
Love it. What I find so refreshing about this book is it just offers a different perspective on commitment.
For sure.
It's not about finding that perfect person. It's about making a conscious choice to create something meaningful, something that lasts, and realizing that it's going to take work.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that relationships are a journey. They're not a destination.
And that the commitment is to the journey itself, not just to the person.
So well said.
It's about showing up every single day and choosing to love, even when it's freaking hard, choosing to put in the effort, to work through those challenges together and celebrate those wins, both big and small.
You're making me want to reread this book right now.
Me too. It's so good. It's about acknowledging that the challenges, the bumps in the road, those are actually opportunities to grow, both as individuals and as a couple.
Yes. It's like instead of seeing challenges as failures, we can see them as stepping stones.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. Honestly, it's got me thinking about my own relationships and how I can apply some of this stuff to make them even stronger.
Same here. There's always room for growth, right?
Always. So what's standing out to you as the biggest takeaway? What's resonating the most?
That's a tough one. There's so much good stuff here. But I think what's hitting me the hardest is that unconditional commitment isn't about being perfect.
It's about progress, not perfection. I like that.
Yeah, it's about showing up every day and choosing to love, even when it's hard. It's about realizing that we're all a work in progress and that building a lasting relationship that takes time and effort and a willingness to grow together.
Beautifully said. And this idea, it's not just for romantic relationships either, right?
Oh, absolutely not. It's for all kinds of relationships, families, friendships, even our relationship with ourselves.
Right. It's about showing up for the people in our lives that we care about, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's hard.
And recognizing that even small acts of commitment can have a huge impact, you know? Like a ripple effect, making everything more positive and supportive.
Love that image. Another thing that really stuck with me from this book was its discussion about conflict.
Oh, yeah. Conflict is inevitable in any relationship.
But the book talks about approaching conflict as a team.
Like you're working together to figure things out, not battling against each other.
It's about remembering you're on the same side, even when you're disagreeing.
Which is way easier said than done. Emotions get involved, people get defensive, or they shut down. It can get messy.
For sure. But the book gives some really practical tips for handling conflict constructively.
Yeah, like using I statements instead of you statements.
So instead of saying, you always do this, it's, I feel hurt when.
Exactly. And focusing on the behavior, not the person, and knowing when to take a break if things are getting too heated.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether.
No way. Conflict is normal.
It's about learning to fight fair.
Haha, exactly. And it also talks about the importance of forgiveness.
Oh, forgiveness is huge.
It's about choosing to let go of that resentment and move forward. And yeah, it's not always easy.
But the book frames it as an act of self-care.
It's about freeing yourself from all that anger and bitterness.
And then creating space for healing and growth in the relationship.
Because we all screw up sometimes.
And giving ourselves and forgiving others is essential for building healthy, loving relationships.
Couldn't agree more.
It's about creating a space where both people can be real, be vulnerable, admit when they mess up, and then grow from it.
You know, that reminds me of another point this book makes.
What's that?
It's about recognizing our own patterns, like how we might be contributing to the problems in our relationships.
Because we all have patterns.
Oh, yeah. It's about taking responsibility for our own actions, our own behaviors, rather than always pointing the finger at our partner.
Because, let's face it, none of us are perfect.
Nope. We all come into relationships with some baggage, little quirks, deeper wounds. And that stuff can definitely trip us up.
That's so true.
And the book encourages us to really look at those patterns, to ask those tough questions.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like what keeps happening in my relationships? Or what lessons am I attracting over and over again? Or even what are those old wounds that I haven't dealt with that might be stopping me from connecting with other people?
Wow. Yeah, those are deep.
They are, but facing them head on could change everything.
I can see that.
Because until we really get to know ourselves, our own patterns, we're probably going to keep making the same mistakes over and over.
Right. I've heard that before. Something like, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten.
That's the one. So yeah, it's about doing that inner work, examining our beliefs, our values, our behaviors, all that stuff, so we can show up as the best version of ourselves.
Be the best partner we can be.
Exactly. And that inner work, it can be hard, but it's worth it.
Totally worth it.
It makes you more self-aware, more compassionate, and I think more capable of creating that love that we all want.
One of the things I appreciate about this book is that it doesn't offer a quick fix. There's no magic formula.
Yeah, no easy answers.
It gives you this framework, this way of understanding how relationships really work.
Yeah.
And then it gives you tools to make conscious choices that fit your values.
It's all about recognizing that relationships, they take work. And the commitment you make, it's to that journey, not just to some end goal you have in mind.
And it reminds us that even the smallest, most consistent actions can create huge change over time.
It's like planting seeds. You plant those seeds of love, kindness, compassion. You nurture them patiently. And then eventually they grow into something beautiful and strong.
Oh, that's such a beautiful image. And I love how the book doesn't just focus on the hard stuff. It reminds us to celebrate the good stuff too.
Oh, for sure. Gratitude is huge. It's about appreciating those little things, making time for fun and connection.
Yeah, remembering to enjoy the journey, even when it's a little bumpy. Savor those moments of joy, of connection. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
It all comes down to cultivating a mindset of appreciation. Gratitude for what you have. I think that can really change how we experience relationships and even life in general.
I'm so glad we did this deep dive. I feel like I have this whole new perspective on commitment.
Me too. It's been a pleasure unpacking all this with you.
Okay, before we wrap up, there's one last thought from the book that really stuck with me.
Okay, hit me with it.
What if, instead of obsessing over finding that perfect partner, we focused on becoming the best partner we can be?
Boom! That is so good.
It's about taking responsibility for our own growth, our own evolution, and recognizing that the healthiest relationships, the strongest ones, they happen when both people are committed to growing and becoming better versions of themselves.
It's about approaching relationships with that open heart in mind, with curiosity, compassion, and a willingness to learn and evolve together.
So well said. And for our listeners out there who are feeling inspired, check out Second Marriages, Why 40% Succeed and 60% Don't. It's a really great resource for anyone who wants to dive deeper into this stuff.
And remember, even tiny changes can make a huge difference. Just start where you are, with what you have, and take it one step at a time.
And be kind to yourself. Relationships are messy and complicated, but they're also incredibly rewarding.
They can bring so much joy, so much support, such a deep sense of belonging.
This deep dive has been all about changing how we think about commitment. It's not just about finding the right person. It's about making the choice to build something meaningful,
Yeah.
something that lasts.
And if we can take even just one of the strategies we talked about today and put it into practice this week, imagine the impact it could have.
It's those small steps, those daily acts of love and kindness that add up.
It's remembering that love isn't a destination, it's a journey. And we're all in it together, figuring it out as we go.
That's the beauty of it all, isn't it?
It is.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it helpful, maybe even a little inspiring, and maybe, just maybe, it challenged you to think about things in a new way.
And remember, the conversation doesn't stop here. Keep exploring these ideas, have those tough conversations, and make those choices that are going to lead you to the relationships you really want.
Because relationships are what make life so rich. So let's do everything we can to nurture them, cherish them, and make them the best they can be. Until next time, keep diving deep.